right. Game time.
All right.
Kevin.
It's good to be back.
Round two.
Well, back in a different location, back in the same situation together, right?
That's right. New environment, adapt, overcome.
Yep.
Figure out how to get that thing set up.
Same clowns, different rodeo.
Same city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people were very interested. So, you just go back to the well.
Yeah.
So you wanted to sit down, and I'm glad.
Well, there's a lot of water left. A lot of water left in the well. It's not going dry.
There is.
Soon. Yeah.
And I mean, as I told you, the awesome thing was people were very interested in what you had to say, what Blackrock, the whole thing.
Yeah.
There was a ton of interest in who you guys were, who you were, which was pretty incredible. I got more feedback from that podcast than I have from any of the others. So it was awesome to be able to do this again.
Yeah,
when's a good time to release it? Will be the question.
We'll see. Yeah, it can't just be one after the other. People are gonna get real bored of that.
Did he pay to be on that podcast? No, this is not a pay-to-play system. But this time you brought notes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I brought some notes. So, we spent a lot of time talking about me last time, which was a little strange, a little uncomfortable, but maybe good for some context. But I wanted to make sure that I had some more time to hit some transition prep stuff, and everybody's got their own version of it. Stuff that I have experienced, and my perspective on it is it's just a way. It's not the way. Right? But I think having now really blessedly having viewed the transition process, from the perspective of going through it, and then now so rapidly having turned back and having helped other people through it, employed people going through it, hired people going through it, I have refined my perspective a lot on what it means to transition successfully out of the military on active duty, and I want to make sure that I capture that in some sense, because my thoughts on it look a lot different than they did when I was sitting in front of a computer going through transition assistance program slides. Right. As I was still wearing a uniform and I just got a long glide slope.
Just got off the phone when I was coming in here. I called a guy was recommended, and he'll be on later on. He enlisted in 1982.
Yeah.
And he punched out in 05.
Yeah. And
just hearing his story, both the personal and then the leaving the military in 2005 looks so much different than leaving the military in 2022. I mean, TAPS he didn't call it TAPS. Yeah. There was no TAPS.
Yeah.
But the 3-day process to tell a service member how to do this. And then he went through his own, he's a retired first sergeant out of the Marine Corps. And his experience was just night and day different. So I look forward to people get that perspective, but that's 20 years. And once a first sergeant, always a first sergeant, I think, in the Marine Corps. Other branches handle that position a little differently, but all he has done since is 20 years of continuing to work with me. He's basically been a first sergeant for the last 20 years.
When you're good at something,
Brett, it's called something different, but he's a mentor. He's built nonprofit programs up in, he's in Mishawaka. So it'll be interesting having a guy in his 60s share his story. But your story is impacting service members. They're getting ready to leave right now.
Well, his perspective is going to be really fresh as well, because he works so closely with. You don't have to be necessarily going through. It gives you a unique perspective to go through it, but you can only go through it one time, maybe 2 times. Right. If you're lucky, or something weird happens in your life where you're breaking service.
That's right.
But you can only go through it one time, and then you just have to be committed to staying current if you're going to keep working with veterans who are coming out, understanding where they're coming from and what they're going through in that transition process. So.
Yeah, he's going to be good. So look forward to having Sam on there. And he was recommended from, I don't think you know, our ambassador in North Carolina, Tony.
No.
Tony is also a retired first sergeant, but he's in North Carolina. He focuses on all the bases in North Carolina for us.
Okay.
And does a really good job.
Yeah.
But he has a direct tie to Indiana. Yeah. So he lived here. He only moved for family. So his time, he spent 7 years, I think, up here, in South Bend. So he recommended him. But let's get started. What's your first thought?
We were just talking about the transition assistance program, and I think there's 2 opposite ends of the spectrum views, and not a lot of nuance that goes into thinking about that, right? And the first end of the spectrum in terms of thought is, well, this is going to be the program that gets me to where I need to be, right? They wouldn't make me do this if it wasn't gonna work, right? And that's probably not the approach to take, right? Because the transition assistance program is a way to help reduce the organizational liability of the Defense Department for service members like failing to launch initially when they get out.
Which, by the way, great movie, Failure to Launch. My wife and I just watched it coincidentally. So that's funny, Matthew McConaughey.
Well, that's kind of what they're trying to avoid with this. But it's almost like the bare minimum. And because of the scale of the organization, it's never going to be personalized to your situation, to what you want to do. So you can't depend on anyone else. It's the same thing with your career in the military, right? Like nobody manages your career better than you will. And there's certain things you can't do. There's constraints put on you and things you have to do. But aside from that, like you have to make your preferences known and then also like do the things to prepare to achieve those preferences. Same thing for getting out. TAP's not going to do the work for you. It's going to give you some information about things to do. And if you have no other context for that, it can help.
It's like a baseline for everybody. And then how do you mold that program to you?
Yeah, exactly. You know, they're all, I think one of the issues with it too is that, you know, you get some great coaching on like federal resumes, how you get federal jobs, do USA jobs, that kind of stuff. Because that's the context that the people running those programs have. Because they're federal employees who did a federal resume to get a federal job, the one way right out of service. So they have the perspective to give you that. But there's a whole commercial world out there that, you know, is not really the defining context for the TAP program due to some formal and informal structural issues with that. So that's one end of it, right? The other end is like the totally cynical, like, oh, this is BS. Like, I don't need any of this. I know how to talk to people, and like ChatGPT is going to build my resume for me and stuff. That's not a healthy attitude to take to it. You have to go through it. You're going to get made to go through it anyway. Just take the good with the, I won't say bad, but not necessarily like, take the more valuable with the less valuable information that they have out there and understand that like your personal context is what's making that more or less valuable. The course is more or less neutral. So nobody's doing TAP to you, right? It's just something, it's another tool in the toolbox that you can use to get to where you need to go.
When we go to TAP centers all over the country, I think that that's a good way to say it. They're building from the basest of levels, and then they're saying, because it's also covering a lot of material that some folks have said, well, I wish I went through it now, because now I would appreciate like how do you use your education benefits? That's something that a lot of service members end up getting but there's a class for that.
There is, and it's one of the ones they make you go through, but it's also one of the most boring ones. So, you know.
Well, I mean, that's why God gave us coffee.
I mean,
exactly. You get inspired to listen. I mean, the finance class. But as I talk to service members, TAPS has done a good job at certain things, right? Like if you now dissect your paycheck differently in that last 12 months than maybe to compare it to the private side, than maybe people did prior to the finance class, right? Like nobody is uncertain of BAH paid. So I mean, you have your base salary, and then you have your BAH, and then you have all these other fun things added on. Whereas in a different time, I think that they just like looked at their paycheck, service member just looked at paycheck and said, this is this. And then they ignored how, man, when I come out, I mean, taxes. Like that is a quantifiably large impact when you leave active duty, go into the private sector, and now your entire base salary is taxed, and then you're in commissions or whatever.
Just when we look at compensation at BlackRock Strategy for people coming out, you know, what we look at is just naked, not the fringe benefits, not the health insurance, like all that stuff. When you go on to DFAS and look at your like total compensation package, they have that number for you where they factor in the value of everything, right? We just look at the direct financial compensation as a benchmark, and then we have other formulas for the rest of the fringe benefits that are associated with military service. But it's 8%, right off the top. 8% goes on top of whatever they're making, because that's a rough approximation of the tax advantage that you get from the BAH and BAS being invisible for tax purposes. And there's no on-base housing for companies. Those are called company towns. and they were a real bad thing in like the early 1900s.
Yeah. What wasn't that like Ford? I mean, so the large
Ford tried to do it.
that.
Yeah, a lot of coal towns. There was a lot of union versus employer violence in Kentucky and West Virginia that got us away from company towns. But the military kind of takes the opposite approach to that.
Right.
And it does. It creates this cocoon around you where most of your needs are met in a way that's like fairly advantageous, even though there's tons of frustration.
It's the 15 minutes. It's the OG 15-minute city.
Yeah, and it's super convenient.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my kids, I kind of a cool thing, you know, I keep like, here's the card, head on up to wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
And you know that you're in a safe place.
Yeah.
You can ride your bike, you can go for a walk.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how we don't want that in the private side.
I mean, yeah, people want space. Well, some people do want that, but they go,
they can live in New York City.
They can go live in New York City or downtown Indianapolis
That's right.
or something like that. You know, I got a family size where like I need some space to stretch, to let everybody stretch their elbows out a little bit. So it's just different considerations. But, you know, going back to TAP, you know, the finance course is a good one. The veterans benefits one, although it's like watching paint dry, it is also like hugely valuable and just a starting point to being able to understand like that part of the transition through the VA. And that's a whole other rabbit hole that you know, we don't have to get into now.
That's not on the note sheet.
It's not on my note sheet. It's not on my note sheet, but yeah. But you know, all that to say, just look at how you can incorporate the knowledge that you're picking up in TAP with other knowledge sources that you should be leveraging. Like you shouldn't be limiting yourself exclusively to TAP, and you shouldn't fully discount it either. Like merge it with the other stuff.
And when you say, do you have any thoughts on the other stuff, or where would you direct?
Well, there's a lot of different research that goes in. So you got to think of like location, like where you want to be. A lot of research you can do on that. Everything from, you know, like slick sheets. Like we have the, you know, places like InVets that like actively recruit veterans to come in that help kind of articulate, here's the benefits of living in Indiana. Here's the regional differences between where you might live. We've got Visit Indy, right? Where and the Indy the recruitment arm from that looks to like advertise the state. You know, those other states have analogous.
Not as good.
Not as good, obviously, because very few places are as good, right? But you can use those resources, you know, other places. Reddit's a good example of this, or you can go on like a city subreddit and just like start looking at, okay, what are people saying about places to live? Always important to consider like perspective and also like
source
on that. But it's good anecdotes to initiate like your own research and research projects, really, because that's what this is from there. For like job sectors, you know, that's kind of a more complicated one. There's a lot of services out there that will help you kind of identify industry sectors. Some of the limitations, like you have to be careful when you're evaluating those, though, because the easy way to do that is just connecting your MOS to, or your, you know, I guess it's the same across all services, but whatever your MOS code is going to like output the jobs you think that, or they think that you can do.
It's one source that recently I used with an employer was Copilot, transferring, and they use Copilot. So they used mine as an example. Not the easiest FSE or MOS to transfer, but it gave an incredible lineup of positions, some that hypothetically a person like me would be interested in, some that a person like me would absolutely not be interested in.
It might be good at them.
Right. Capability is present, desire is lacking. But it also gave an explanation. That was the part that was almost terrifying. That it was able to take my job and then explain to an employer what I've done in training with no detail from me of how I would be good at X, Y, and Z. And that ended, and to be frank, that ends up being a resource that I use with employers, especially if we're looking at somebody in your space. It's a little different, and it would be interesting to use somebody from your space. But in their space, it really answers very clearly for what they're looking for. And that was just that's just Copilot.
Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit later about using AI tools and some of the pitfalls associated with those, because I see the pitfalls all the time, but I also see the benefits, and we use it on both sides of the coin, right? You can use it to get hired. You can also use it to hire effectively. There's pitfalls on both sides. I'll talk through some of that. yes, AI can help you to narrow it down, but you have to, and most of the tools now, like the ones that are really the new hotness, right? They have some sort of like AI capability. Right? It's not like some person in a dark room somewhere like crunching through your resume thinking of some stuff that you might like to do. But again, MOS codes form the basis of a lot of those tools. And the existing body of work is changing a little bit now, but up until recently it's been mostly like MOS based. Right. The tools that you're going to use in TAP are MOS based. A good example of that is like the credentialing program that DoD has for, well, now just enlisted soldiers, but before was open to everybody.
Do you know why they made the change?
I mean, because it's officer get a college degree. Yeah, they don't want to incentivize you to go to private industry any more than you.
Okay. So it's retention.
Yeah, it's a retention tool.
Okay.
It's also a way to encourage soldiers to get additional credentials and training on their own time. Benefits both sides, right? But when they're looking at prioritizing benefits like that, and I say this as an officer, right? It makes total sense to like target the enlisted soldier base because they're the technicians. They're the ones who are really going to be putting those certifications into practice every single day. And aside from like, maybe like a PMP or something, but you get that training. If you know how to do MBMP, you know how to do, PMP stuff. It's just a different language set for it. So, yeah, but Cool is a great example of this where you put in your MOS into the calculator and out comes the credentials that are like, recommended to you on that. A lot of the tools on the outside when you're doing like market research for where do I want to work, what do I want to do when I grow up and get out of the military, they're going to be based on the numbers and letters that define your job, your official job role. But it doesn't capture the intangibles, and it doesn't capture all the extra jobs that you do as collateral duties on top of your real job.
Do you have a recommendation on where folks should go?
You're going to have to put some of these in the show notes, which would be good because I do have some, but not off the dome here. But yeah, there's. We should probably edit this part out. We'll put some in the show notes for this so that people can go to the links. I actually have a NCO I used to work with that works with like one of the better ones. Down in Texas. Yeah, no, I just totally lost my train of thought. Thinking about starting McCorkindale.
That's definitely edited out.
Yeah. And okay, so as people are thinking about tools, I think the people who get hit hardest by the almost paralysis by analysis of like, what do I want to do when I grow up? Like NCOs, because they do a ton, but your job is still narrowly scoped to your MOS. Combat MOSs in the Army are, and Marine Corps are probably the most at risk of this, right? Because it's like, what do? It's like, well, I kicked in doors and shot people in the face. It's like, okay, cool. That's the cool part of what you did 10% of the time. What are you actually doing, right? You're advising, you're consulting, you're training, or
planning.
You're planning. You should be helping with the planning. Like that's not officer work, that's teamwork. So there's these parts of the job that are not going to get captured by something that's just looking for like the GoArmy.com description of what a tank crewman does. That you have to feed to the machine. So just be aware that training data doesn't match your experience. It's just like TAP.
Well, I mean, in the same vein, but what do you say to the person leaving who isn't certain what they want to do?
Yeah.
Like they have this body of knowledge and experience, but then they say, I'm open. And those words, like they're the worst words for me. Jesse, I'll do anything. I'm open. Please no. Let's not say that. But now from the not say that to the let's get targeted. Because no hiring manager is responsible for figuring out of our life as a veteran. We are responsible for that, and then we target. So what kind of advice would you give to someone leaving that says, I'm open? And it's said from all ranks.
Yeah. Well, I said that.
Okay.
But
so let's do it. All right, Kevin.
And I wasn't really open. I just didn't know what I wanted to do.
And I think that's the case for most.
But, okay, so the first thing, if you don't know specifics on like jobs that you might want to do or companies you might want to work for, which is fine, at least know the things that you really like and the things that you really hate. Like the things that you refuse to do and the things that you really want to do. Accept that those might change, right? The stuff you absolutely refuse to do might change sometimes because you find out you don't actually dislike those so much. But, sometimes you might find out that like you're not good at, or, you don't have the training that you thought you did for, or you discover new passions or talents outside. There's a whole host of reasons why they might change, but you got to have a starting point. Think about what you did in the military, your favorite aspects from that, and orient yourself on those and use those as search criteria for what you might want to have, what you might want to do. Have a discussion with a career counselor, someone at InVets, an AI, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever. Like, use that as a starting point, because that
Please don't replace.
It's not. It's a facility. But
Right.
if there's people out there that have never had contact with you, right? And so
Yeah.
they might need to do it on their own. That's a way that you can do it. And then from there, the other piece of advice is, you might not know what you want to do, but especially if you got a family, you got to do something.
Right.
So figure out like what you can do that's like going to bridge to the time that you figure that out.
And I think that's more important for those who haven't retired. You don't have the time. You don't have the gift of time necessarily. But then on the other side of that coin, you do have the 12 months to dive into that process and not wait till the last minute.
Even if you're retiring though, man, and you would hope that if you have reached a point of retirement, that you have also like put in the consideration for like what comes next, because the only certainty about military life is you have to leave it eventually.
That's right.
And that you've built yourself a cushion to figure that out from a financial standpoint. But one of the most eye-opening parts of TAP for me, going through with a cohort of like field grade and senior officers, was how few of them had done that. And I was like, well, my God, if these people haven't done that, like, what's it like in the other tiers that are going through this?
Similar.
Yeah, and people who are saying, I want to stay in Washington D.C. I don't know what I want to do. I haven't really put any thought into a job, and there's a lot of stuff I don't want to do, and I'm planning on just like living off my pension. And like the TAP person would be like, okay, well, what does your wife do? And I'm like, oh, well, she stays at home because we've been in the military and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you're going to live under a bridge in Washington, D.C. in like 6 months if this is...
At 3,500 BAH is not going to be around.
Yeah, that's not going to cut it, man. So you have to be realistic about the type of life that you want to live outside the Army and like how much that costs.
Right.
Because it's a huge, we want to find jobs that we're passionate about, and that's the ultimate goal. But that doesn't happen for everybody instantly. It happened for me, and I got unbelievably lucky. That's not what happens for everybody, and it's okay. Understand, like, you still got to put food on the table.
Yeah, and it starts with knowing. It starts with the targeted approach to what do I want to do. Yeah, and then you have a scale within that, within whatever that career field is. You have a scale at, well, I'm willing to be here, so I'll go as low as here. Ideally, is here. Yeah, and then we can target companies. Yeah, based on that. Yeah, and also cost of living analysis. Yep. Is something that we help with, especially if we have somebody leaving a big city. Take Atlanta, take DC, take California, wherever they are, any base in California, Colorado, Washington. You take that cost of living. Okay, so if you do want to stay there, what does that look like for a position, and how many positions are there? When I met with a company either yesterday or the day before, and it was yesterday. The issue is we can't tell them to hire a service member, and how many service members is good for a private sector, especially if you have somebody in the Guard, which was kind of our conversation yesterday. It was really targeted for the National Guardsmen. Yeah. And based on AT and your responsibilities, a company couldn't operate if they went 50% National Guardsmen.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult. Yeah,
because then they're gone.
Yeah. Especially if there's like if you're an organization that's like based on shift work and stuff, that's really hard. It's going to be a lot harder for you to manage that as a guardsman. I don't do shift work, and that's why I'm able to do what I do with the Guard.
And shift work, like for instance, they do have shift work, but that shift work pays over 6 figures. So it's shift work that is also profitable for service members. And they have to do the analysis of how many they are all in. They're a great partner. How many can you bring on? Which means the service member needs to understand that they are competing amongst a talented pool to earn that position. And that it's a company that does have a responsibility to hire service members, but active, guard, reserve, retired, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, they can't hire everyone, even if they want to, because they still have a responsibility to their profit, to their stockholders or members. In that case, they have members. And so present yourself the best possible image. And not that service members all have this, but there can be a level of entitlement that has to come down a little bit. Like, yes, you've done amazing things. Now we have to document it and be humble enough to like realize where we stand.
You have to trust yourself too, to be able to come in and rapidly be competent, rapidly stand out. Because the best of us, the majority of us in the military, we're comfortable with hard work. We're comfortable with relatively ambiguous situations and just working to solve problems together with other people. And that's huge. But you're still an unknown quantity to a company coming in. You have to be confident in your ability to come in at one level and then rapidly advance. Or make a decision that, like, as you become more and more competent and become more of an asset, like, the fit might change between you and a company. And this isn't like the military where you're signed like a 6-year. You're not in def at a company. You're in def until the relationship, and you can walk away and go find something else, and that's fine. But you have to go into the job search coming out with the self-confidence instead of entitlement. I can do this because I've solved hard problems in the past, and I've managed my career in the past, and so I will continue to do that in the civilian world. It's just a pivot. It's not a lane shift.
As someone who has hired service members, gone through the process, but now you're on the other side hiring, have you seen that done well? Do you have examples? I mean, of course, no names, but
yeah.
How does that look?
Well, it's okay. So I will start this conversation by saying that we have a set of criteria that I talked about last time.
6 key
that we use the
characteristics.
six key characteristics, right? And that's adaptability, critical thinking, ability to solve problems, temperament, perspective taking, and conceptual capacity. And those things are all closely tied with people that are self-confident and have the ability to just like pivot, solve problem. So we're bringing people in that we've already decided are going to be good at that. Other places, they're not. They're looking for more like technical side stuff, and then hoping that they're getting someone that also is capable of pivoting. Or they're not hoping that, and they're just hiring specifically for a role, and like they don't really care one way or the other whether or not like you advance or like there's growth or anything like that, or how happy you are, as long as your output meets a certain threshold. So those 6 key characteristics, if you can enhance and improve those, or can articulate your military experience and skills through those things positively, like you're probably going to be okay. And you don't have to be scared of going in at one level and then coming out at another. But it's all part of that process to demonstrate. And that fear will hold you back, right? The imposter syndrome will hold you back. You just got to remember, like, you're not an imposter. You're new, and that's different. You're not good at something yet, but you will be. And if you assess that you don't have the skills to compete or contribute in an area, well, the long glide slope out that you should be taken from the military, you can start doing TAP like 18 months out these days. Retirement up to 2 years out, you can start the process. So think about what you need to make yourself confident enough to do that, and then go do those things, and you'll be successful.
So let's say we were giving advice.
Yeah.
Those 6 key characteristics. Yeah. Right. That just so happens to be important to BlackRock, and it's important to Kevin. Yeah. But a service member could take those and kind of break down their career a little bit and prove how they've done that. And then from there, they can apply that. So you have the ideal, which are those character traits. Yeah. And then you have the practice or the action under that. Yeah. And then they apply within their resume. And then when you're sitting in front of somebody, you can give examples, because a lot of people want tangible examples. It's like we were going through a training one time. Somebody said, every company has integrity as a core value. It's table stakes because everybody says it, but how are we defining it, and how do we see it in action? Now that's not table stakes, because that's the part where you put that in the core value, because now you have something tangible that you can hold on to. We can all define it now. 10 years ago, I don't know if everybody could define integrity, but we've sat through enough books or trainings. So when you take those character traits and you can apply them, did you do that because you brought those in, I think, from your
Yeah,
career?
I did. Yeah, those are actually the 6 major KSAs that they assess for the AWG assessment and selection course, Asymmetric Warfare Group assessment and selection process. But I did not realize how valuable that was until I was at the back end of the hiring process. I just happened to have a set of experiences that resonated with the senior leaders at BlackRock at the time, BlackRock Strategy at the time. They all had similar backgrounds, like CIA, special activities, special operations, that kind of stuff. So they could take my resume and ask me interview questions that pulled that out because they were looking for the same things. And then we articulated that using some of the stuff that I brought to the table and like really crystallized it as part of our hiring philosophy at the company after that. Now turning around.
Say, most of the people that you have, and I could be mistaken, but most of the people that I'm aware of don't have that background at BlackRock.
No, they don't necessarily have that. We have quite a few that do, but the majority do not.
Right.
But they still, it doesn't take, you don't have to be an operator. You don't have to be a CIA operative to have those characteristics.
Not everybody's Jason Bourne at BlackRock Strategy.
None of us are Jason Bourne actually, because Jason Bourne doesn't exist.
What?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, flat out it. No, sorry.
Well, it's nobody is. But it doesn't take pursuing that or chasing that fun stuff in order to have the characteristics you need to succeed on the outside. Right.
But even at BlackRock. I mean, because that's like when I look at the people that I know have met in the organization, a lot of them don't come from that background. Yeah. But you obviously have those character traits that you're looking for. And you're finding those regardless of background. I mean, because you have some folks that, if I'm not mistaken, you have some folks that haven't served.
Yeah, that's true. But we have on our defense focused recruiting website, right? Like serving, effective service, or contribution to national defense doesn't require prior service. It just requires a willingness to serve now. And those background characteristics that can be developed any number of ways. Going back to our earlier conversation about, things that service members have trouble articulating, right? And the ways that we assess ourselves in service, whether that's chest candy or, your OERs or NCOER bullets, the fitness reports, that kind of stuff. I look back at, a tie for the top 2 first sergeants I ever had. And I was lucky to have them while I was a commander as well. RJ Couturier and Sean Rosenthal. They don't look like people that are, making 7 figures on the outside or something like that. Or they don't look like people that are going to be the easiest to transition on paper. They're going to have to find ways once they get out to do that. But what they do have is like this tremendous ability to just adapt to whatever situation is necessary and provide sound advice to solve really hard problems, personnel problems, operational problems, cost and risk problems that are directly translatable to the outside. And they're some of the best people I know at being able to do those things, right? But we have this conception in the business world that it's like, okay, well that only comes from like elite consulting firms, or like you have to have gone to like X college to learn how to do that. They've learned how to do that because they've been doing it for like 20 years. And it's incredibly impressive to watch. And it's eye-opening to see people who are that competent and then look at, okay, well, I need to maybe open the aperture from the other side to, I'm not just laser focused on like, I need everyone to come from CIA. Or I need everyone to come from a special operations background. Only then can I be sure that they have these things. And figure out, how do I ask the right questions to make sure that, like, if I have a Sean or an RJ in the stack, I'm not passing them over because I'm commoditizing their set of experiences.
So take a person who didn't come from that background. What kind of advice would you give for them to either develop some of those skills or bring them out of how can they get that to come forward for somebody who's interviewing them?
Yeah, that's a great transition to something else I wanted to talk about, which is, this conception of authenticity versus like the provisional self. So like last time we talked a little bit about like over translation of resumes into like corporate speak from military speak and how that can cause problems if you aren't prepared to then fluently translate everything else that you talk about into corporate speak. And it's kind of the same for authenticity versus the provisional self. You have to create a sustainable professional personality that you are able to maintain past the interview. You can't like game it, because if you game it, you're only playing yourself, because you're going to find yourself in a place that you hate or a place where you're not the right fit. You've
been hired,
yeah,
and now you find out that you're exposed.
Yes, exactly. Right. Or you're just not happy because you're being successful, but you have to maintain this mask because the company culture is not right, or the jargon or language that you're using is wrong, or you don't like truly understand it. So then you're always constantly like policing yourself, trying to figure stuff out. You know, because you can say fake it till you make it all you want, but like sometimes the time horizon that it takes to make it is a lot longer than you can sustainably fake it.
Right.
And that's a hard balance to strike. So it's easier to just maintain that sustainable provisional self initially, and then ride it in from there, and let there be an examination of culture fit on both sides. And that we have this conception of authenticity oftentimes as just the world has to accept me for who I am, or I can't adjust who I am based on context without compromising some sort of like core value or integrity or authenticity. Like, I'm lying to you because I'm being nice and I don't want to be nice right now. It's like that, but that's not true. Like in a professional environment, there's certain ways to act, and that's different at every company. It's different in every military unit, right? And it's different in every service. So you have to create not an authentic self. You have to create a provisional self that doesn't compromise any like moral or ethical red lines, and that you don't overthink it. Just can you be a good person and also like function in this corporate space? Right. And if you can't do that for like moral or ethical reasons, like that's probably not a company you want to work for anyway. Leave. Right. If you find yourself in that situation, like get out. Right. But if it's the type of thing like that toxic phrase, like, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best, or like I'm
is that a bumper sticker?
Yeah, I don't know. It shouldn't be. Or if it's a warning sign, that's what it is. If it's a bumper sticker. Yeah. The other side of that is like, oh well, I just tell it like it is, or something like that. Well, sometimes you just don't have to say anything.
Yeah. It just rings of no empathy.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. And you get a lot of people that they'll come in, or that we've interviewed, and they're just they're unapologetically jerks, right, from the military, because it's the stereotype, right, where they've adopted a leadership style that works for a bunch of 17, 18, 19-year-old combat arms soldiers. Right. In hard environments, doing hard things, hard physical things, and then they come into a corporate environment and they're like, well, this is going to work. Right?
I should continue to do this.
Yeah, I should continue to do this, and I want to find a place where I can continue to do
regardless
this.
of who they're reporting to or who's reporting to them.
And if that, just stay in the military, man. Like, don't get out, because there isn't a place where that's appropriate outside of life and death situation.
I say that to my boys often. Sometimes you enjoy the locker room.
Yeah.
And there's only a few environments left where the locker room can maintain as a place of employment. But that is not the world. Yeah. That is not where you're going to find positions. You're going to have to flex how you speak. You're going to have to ask more questions. 18-year-olds don't use knife hands, but like the equivalent of like, hey man, you jacked that up, and with no care of how the other person responds. And I think that's a challenge. I think it's definitely a challenge for military, but I think it's just a challenge for certain people. And then the military allows for that because we don't have time. Right? Like we do these talks with the military. We don't have time for that.
Well, and this is I want to go back to RJ and Sean as examples of this, because It's what you just said kind of triggered, like, it's a perfect articulation of why they're so effective and like the things that are going to make them effective on the outside and what they need to articulate, right? Is that ability to adapt their styles, not just leadership styles, but just like participation in the world. Adapt their activities to context, right, is huge. And you can see that in the outputs, like soldier outputs, right? In like 150, 200 person organizations, wide variety, soldiers, backgrounds, competencies, and they're able to adapt to get the most out of everyone in that organization and every system in that organization, and like tweak and fine tune it and like insert themselves in different ways into different problem sets. That's huge. So like that's the type of story that you need to tell if you're coming out. Identify what the niche is that you're trying to slide yourself into, and then demonstrate an ability to adapt yourself, because you're not in the niche already, so they know you're not. They know you're not perfect for it, but why you will be perfect for it later, and perfect for other stuff down the road.
What do they do? If you can give specifics, what do they do to do that? Well, help 150 to 200 people get the best out of them.
Well, the easy answer, and the answer I would have given 8 years ago or when I was with him, is like there's just something inherently incredible about them. But that's pretty dismissive of the work that they put into being like that, whether or not they consciously did that. And it's the same for anyone getting out, right? You're going to be leveraging skills and having to think about things that you may not have ever consciously thought about like before. Why am I good or bad at something, right? And for them in particular, it's just this like practical experience coupled with this unyielding enthusiasm and willingness to like learn new things and like do new things, and then like compare that, contrast it, and adapt it alongside their previous experience to get better and like changes as the situation went along, right? They weren't trying to make every new situation this like massive break in the wall transition between like who they were before as a leader or as like a technical expert, and then who they needed to be, right? It was just this gradual flow through the problem sets that they encountered on literally a constant basis over the like 2.5 years that I worked with them.
So, but then, and there's a level of introspection that has to be valued there.
Yeah.
Certainly in their quiet moments, they were looking in the mirror and they were asking themselves tough questions to grow. I think that's one of the things that we oftentimes neglect is evaluating how do people respond to what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. And realizing that your position and role description that you find yourself in is not the thing that makes you who you are. It's not even the thing that makes you good at the job. It just is the job. For them, I look at them compared to their peers across, our battalion, the brigade, other people that I met throughout the entirety of my active and now National Guard career, and they still stand out. Like it still holds up. And that's not to take anything away from like the myriad of talented people that are out there. But they were better because they were in a role. They weren't like performing a role. They were just there, and who they were as a person, who they chose to be every day, who they shaped themselves to be based on the problems that they saw that they had to solve because of the role. That's what made them great, right? And that's what makes people great on the outside. It's not the job description; it's the problem-solving ability. And that's when you're interviewing people. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for fitness for a role, but it's not, at least for us, it's not a block check. We're looking like, are you competent enough? Like the role represents the baseline. That's the job description is the baseline. And then we're also looking at like, are you, fit for growth? Are you going to be a positive impact on our company culture? There's a lot of ambiguous and unexpected stuff that comes up for us, just like anywhere else in life. Are you going to be comfortable solving those problems, or have you decided that you don't want to learn new things anymore? And there's jobs out there for that.
Yes, and you can get paid. Yeah. Does BlackRock have a way to quantify that during the interview process?
Not like numerically, but we have gotten pretty good at like using behavior-based interview methods to pull that out through multiple rounds, working actively to eliminate biases like recruitment on the recruitment side, to pull in the right people, not necessarily like the criteria shouldn't be, does he look like me or not?
Right.
And I say that like characteristics-wise, personality-wise,
Right.
that kind of thing. It should be, is this a person who would be a good teammate?
Right.
And
That's a diverse thing.
Yeah, that's a much wider funnel than does Kevin like him?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to take, I did a recruiting class years ago. Recruit the Best is what it was called, and behavioral-based assessments. I think you do something in that realm.
Yeah.
Right? You have a test of some kind.
It's not really a test. It's just, it's our interview process, right? We look at the resume, we do our own initial scrubs, we have our bank of behavior-based interview questions that we can use as a base to tailor to the person, that are all mapped to the KSAs, the characteristics that we hire for, and the baseline technical competencies.
Do you do a personality profile of any kind?
No, those aren't like Myers-Briggs it's astrology for MBAs. It's there are real ones, right? There are real ones, but to do them effectively requires a level of expertise, like formal training, that we just don't have. Later on, like for our assessors, for example, for one of our contracts, like we do a training program where we use the NEO PIR, personality inventory, which is, that's the one they use, I think, across the board as part of every selection process for especially, but that has to be administered by a psychologist, and it is in those environments, right? A professional who can interpret the results correctly. Ours, we do that just as a starting point for people to think about themselves. We don't use it as an evaluation. We don't be like, we only hire INTJs or whatever, because that's...
Well, that would be horrible also. That's its own confirmation bias on the other side, right? Where you're testing to verify instead of testing to develop a team. I was familiar with different personality profiles on the other side, private sector. But then it's not, you should never eliminate someone based on, from the candidacy based on the profile, but then you have a bank of questions on the other side, because different people will score, especially if somebody is highly honest, and a good profile should indicate honesty. Then you have a bank of questions that will say, based on this, can you give me an example? And then to the opposite, right? Like if they have a very low care for others, would be a great one.
Yeah.
Very low care for others. Can you give me an example of a time where you maybe served someone, and then when they stumble, that's validated that they probably don't care. But if they don't, then they're honest person. This gets back to like your authentic or provisional. We all have certain character traits that we have to, especially if you're married, where our dominant character trait needs to be put down a little bit, and maybe accentuate the one that partner is looking for. So that's why I asked that.
The fact that you bring up spouses is a great portion of the discussion on the provisional self as well, because who you are and how what you do defines who you are, and like the family dynamic that you have changes significantly when you leave the military. The military is an all-encompassing role. I've never met anyone who can just treat it like a job and like be successful at it. And one of the things that I always notice, with one glaring exception, he's just a remarkable human being with a remarkable family. But the trend that I notice with like Army senior leaders who are married is like their spouse was all in on it, right? Like all in. Because it takes that level of commitment once you get to a certain point. I got out right on the cusp. The cliff that I was looking over was like PCSs every year and a half, like getting on that box check train so that I could hit the things the Army needed me to hit to get to where I wanted to go, or would want to go had I stayed in. And, your spouse gets on that train, or she doesn't, and then you find yourself at the end of your career being like, well, what do I have to show for this? You don't want that. But your dynamic is going to change getting out, and so your provisional self as you get out might change into more of a support role, right? Especially for those of us with professional spouses, professional wives, in my case, in your case, where I was getting out and my wife was establishing her business here in Indianapolis. So while I was looking for a job and like figuring out who I was, because I spent my entire adult life in the military, it was time, for me to take a little bit of a backseat for a while, to help her get established, to help our family get established here. And that's very important. And it's not usually a role as the serving person, right? Whether that's a husband or a wife that's in the military, That's not a role that the military allows you to do at any point.
Right.
You don't get to support your wife's career or your husband's career if you're in.
And if they're not also.
Yeah.
If you're not dual military. That's right. So what kind of things how'd you go?
Well, it's sometimes like childcare, sometimes it's just, you're doing the research on the house that you want to buy if you haven't gotten one already, or like where you want to live. Some of it is like staying sane for the family, right? Mm-hmm. Like when we got out, we had 3 kids, wife had a career, we're trying to find a house. Like we don't have time for me to wallow around and be like who am I now? Like I've got the SADs because I don't have the boys around me all the time now, that kind of stuff. So, and that's probably a little of pejorative on the attitude there, or reductive. But I didn't have time to like wallow, right? So like part of supporting your spouse in those cases is like getting stuff figured out, and putting that provisional self together. That's sustainable provisional self, doing what you have to do to make the transition so that as your family gets settled, puts down roots, starts work, if your spouse is working or whatever, you're not the anchor dragging along, like keeping them tied to the military more than they need to be. Because at that point, it's part of your history, and you got to keep looking forward.
Right. The book's still being written.
Yeah, you can't always look back, no matter how much of an impact it's had on your life.
So, I mean, you took to allow for your wife to be able to develop her practice or go in, you owned some of that. Some of the things that maybe you would not have owned prior.
Well, some of that she absolutely owned. A perfect example, when we first got married, very quickly, as we discussed before, right? We got to Germany thinking, okay, well, we're gonna have this time to like get settled in, because that's what they tell you, right? And then I got on ground, and I was like, all right, like I'm here to get settled in, like we're trying to figure out where we're gonna live. And they're like, well, the first thing we need to do is get you to the issue facility, because we're going to Hohenfels in 5 days. And I was like, oh, well, they told me that like I couldn't go anywhere for like a month. And they're like, we already processed your waiver. We got to get ready to deploy. So get your stuff. Your wife will be fine in the hotel. Let's go. Right?
I'm sorry, have you met my wife? You can't tell me what she said.
Exactly. And so I went to Hohenfels, and it was there with a cell phone that I purchased at the gas station on the Kaserne for a month, a little bit over a month actually. And I came back, my wife had bought a car, she'd set up the apartment, she had figured out her way around town in Schweinfurt to be able to get around. It was amazing. I came back and she's like, do you want to drive home? And I hadn't driven in Germany before yet, so I was like, no, I don't want to get in an accident. Here, you drive me home. Drive me home.
So a high level of autonomy.
And so she did that to start out with, right? And so coming back to Indiana, I had the luxury of it being a lot more of a team effort. And so, I didn't do as much there as she had ever done in like the new PCSs and stuff. She found all of our houses. She got all of the stuff outside the military settled. And it was a big part of the reason why I was able to be as successful as I was in my military career.
The learning curve for you,
it was hard.
Coming back to Indiana,
versus
the learning curve for her going to Germany.
Well, it's still a huge learning curve, right? Like we're still always trying to figure out that balance between my career and hers. And I probably took on a fraction of the additional workload that she had, on a PCS, for example, when we came back home.
How would you say? Definitely not to cut you off, but so you just mentioned something I think a lot of veterans now are dealing with is how do you balance that? Spouse also has a career. Tactics have you guys developed as a household to keep harmony to the best of your ability?
That's
knowing that you're probably not both with halos.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. My halo is much more tarnished than hers is. Hers is about as close to perfect as you can get.
She's on the verge of saying
she's solidly in there, right?
Okay.
But so she would demand that I highlight that we have had a lot of advantages that other people don't necessarily have, right? Like we came back home to Indiana.
Right.
And we had been able to put together like a pretty sizable financial cushion. She already had a job that she was going to walk into here that was a good job. And that's not the case for everybody. Now, as we've grown in our civilian careers, it's much more, I found that it's much more complex, right, from my perspective, because in the military it was, I gotta do this. Like, I don't get a choice whether or not I'm going to the field or something like that. So like, I'm just gonna focus on that. And then, she, being the saint that she is, was always like right behind me, helping, pushing, taking care of all the stuff that allowed me to focus on that. And now she has her own career and business that she needs to focus on, just like mine. Like, a nanny helps, and I understand that that's like a very privilege. That's a luxury, right? But we wouldn't be able to do that without one. So like, childcare is like a huge issue. It's always going to be a huge issue, no matter where you go. And we got lucky. Ours is great. So that's one way that we make it balanced out. That's probably the biggest one, is being able to balance like childcare tasks, and then being willing to share the workload on stuff at home, right? Because if she's doing her thing during the workday, I'm doing my thing. You got to find ways to still like survive as relatively put together family and not live in garbage all the time,
right?
In your house. And I'm telling you, like,
do you guys have any tasks that you like divide up responsibility?
No, we're working on that always, right? You're always finding new tasks as your family grows. The tasks change, so you think that you've got a rhythm down, and then something happens, and like,
Elizabeth's like a task-oriented person. She likes to have a checklist. I throw all of the checklists in a hat, and then I just pluck out whatever needs to be done. I'm like, at the end of the day, there won't be anything left in the hat. And for Elizabeth, it's the opposite. She wants to write down her hours of day, and then each block is affiliated with some sort of task that needs to be accomplished. So that's an interesting two people.
Ours is similar. It's less structure versus unstructured, and more like digital versus analog. Like, Brooklyn works off the written calendar and stuff, which is in one place in the house, and like, I run off like 6 different calendars, Teams, Google, company calendar, my personal calendar, that kind of stuff. And so I need it digital so I can access it anywhere and stuff. So that's like the kind, it's like, how much can I pull you to digital, and how much can she pull me to like checking the fridge, all the time for like new stuff that might have popped up.
Did you check the fridge? No, I didn't. Yeah, I thought there's eggs. There's eggs in there. Is there something? Okay.
It's more of like a stylistic choice in that, but it's kind of just a give and take. It's a new partnership, and it's really made me realize how much I kind of took for granted, or was able to take for granted, that backside support that our spouses provide for us when we're in the military, that is built in structurally. The military is built for a 1950s family with one income, that you live on or around the base, and your wife volunteers at the FRG. Like, that's it. Right. The army's like soldier support systems in a lot of cases like run off the volunteer labor.
I'm just making sure FRG's family readiness
group. Yeah.
Okay. We call it something different, but
okay.
Did your wife do that? No, she didn't.
Yeah, she did for 2 companies. Yeah. She had great co-leads, right? First, like, RJ Couturier's wife, Nikki, tons of experience in the military, and like, tons of experience that we didn't have dealing with like soldier family issues. That was like hugely educational. So she was tremendous. Big part of the reason why RJ is so successful. And then Sean and his family were also great. And then all the other first sergeants and people that I had. There's a crop of people that are always supporting. The expectation, right, is always that the commander's wife runs the FRG if she's there, which is yet another burden that Brooklyn took on to support the career. And it's tough. But it's just another example of something that I take for granted.
Right. And then you get out, and now your trash needs to be taken care of. Kids need to be going to school. Wife's got a job. You have a job.
There's not one avenue anymore. It's a constant balance between, your career, my career. You've got, some events you have to go to. I've got to go travel. My job requires a fair amount of travel. So in the midst of all this, like, I'll go to like Australia for 2 weeks, and then I come back and it's like coming back from a deployment where everybody's functioning without you there,
right.
and now you're trying to reinsert yourself, and
That's
you're messing up the bedtime routine, you're messing up the bath time, like meals are chaos. It's
well, one thing that you said, there's a sacrifice that takes place by both parties. Each family has to figure that sacrifice out.
Yeah.
But then either having family support or support somewhat is mandatory. And in some ways, that's the reconciliation of two people working. If you're developing a career, then both parties are working, and then how do you get that other support? Some people have to go to family if they have that luxury, but then the other side is bringing people into the home and having them help.
It takes a village, and villages look different now than they did, in ancient times. They definitely look different than they did when I was growing up as well. Regardless of whether or not you have one built in, you still need one, so sometimes you got to pay for one. But that's something that you got to factor into how you're getting out. Where am I going to live? Am I going to have a village, or am I going to have to purchase a village around me, or build it some other way that still involves an investment of like time and effort and opportunity costs that I won't be able to spend on other things. So yeah, that's got to factor into it. And then the other decision that we had to make getting out was, are we getting all the way out, or am I going to stay in the reserve component? And I chose to stay in the reserve component, Compo 2, right, the National Guard. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit too, because the process is a little bit different at every base that you find yourself at, and you have to drive that process just as much as you would if you're going to stay in the reserves. You can do like Palace Chase, I think is the Air Force one. Or
we have Palace Chase, Palace Front. It just depends on where you are, how you're trying to do it. Are you waiting to the end and then you're separating and then swearing in? Yeah. Or are you halfway through your contract? Yeah. Well, and you've realized active duty is not for you.
Yeah, I just got to get out of here. So for the Army, I think we have a ton of Marines come into the Guard and like Army Reserves. So this is pretty applicable for them as well. But if you're at a base, when you're doing your transition process, you got to go talk to the Reserve Career Counselor, and they will give you the pitch on, do you want to serve? Or in my case, I'd already decided I wanted to do it, so I went to them saying, like, I would like to do this, and I need your help to do that, which was going into the Guard. But the Reserve Career Counselors are reservists, and there is this almost default tendency to try and shift people into the Federal Reserves because it's a much more direct, much more simple process for them. It's one that they're more familiar with and that they can control directly from their office. They don't need to bring in other people from like the state level to do it. You have to go in with that in mind. Like my career counselor, like she was great, very helpful, but like the initial meeting was, here's all these reserve jobs I have, I could put you in like at grade, like here's the opportunities for promotion going forward for this. Like that was kind of it, right? Because she's serving a lot of different people that are about to get out, and there's 50 different organizations that she has to plug into for Compo 2 that are of various degrees of availability and competence and collaborative spirit. I was like, I'm not interested in any of that. I want to go into the Indiana National Guard. And she's like, are you sure? And I was like, I already have a POC. They've already started the paperwork. Like here it is. I can put you together with who you need to talk to. And that, no issues, right? So if you want to do the Guard, reach out to the state recruiting and retention office, get a landing point there, and then provide that to your reserve career counselor. Okay. And even if you go in and you say, you decide you want to do the Guard, like not going into your initial meeting, just at some point afterwards, there's the reserve career counselor is still going to be a part of that as a part of the transition to move you from active duty to Compo 2. So then just tell them, I will reach out and keep you appraised of the situation first and try and help you out, get a POC, and then you can take it from there from like a technical like paperwork standpoint to administer the process to get me.
And I think
get me over there.
I mean, for me, TAPS was included that mandatory Guard Reserve conversation where the pitch is on their behalf. But I also, I'm sure you did something very similar. I reached out to quite a few spots to get an idea of like, what's your battle rhythm look like? because I am leaving active duty for reasons. So I need to make sure that the tempo is appropriate for my family. Which one? I mean, I had to go Air National Guard because the work here on the reserve side wasn't what I was interested in. So I think that's another component that service members have to consider is like get on the phone with somebody in your area and have a conversation with who there's like a mentor, but not like officially.
At the very least, get a POC to make it easier for that reserve career counselor to get you what you want, right? And this goes back to our initial conversation about continuing to manage your career, continuing to think about what you want and how to get there, and taking active steps to do that. If you want to stay in a reserve capacity, whether that's Compo 2 or Compo 3, you need to be proactive in that to make sure that you get what you want out of your continued service.
That's a really good point. Because that paperwork takes, I mean, I don't.
It can take a long time, depending on Indiana. It does not take a long time because our R&R, our recruiting and retention battalion they're pretty on it and it's great. Yeah, okay. I'm not getting any compensation for saying this. I literally just love.
The whole idea is that we are giving advice, hopefully helpful advice. Yeah, and to people who are in right now that are considering this. Yeah. And what do they do and how do they do it? Sure, you don't get compensation, but it is helpful for a service member to have. Yeah. From people that aren't standing in front of the classroom, because both of us made similar decisions. Yeah. I didn't end up in Indiana as far as the Guard goes. Yeah. Still, we didn't want to, I mean, there's still things to be done. There's still work to be done. And how do you go about, I needed over 90, they would have been terrified if I came to them with less than 90 days to take care of all my paperwork. And I don't know why that is. Yeah. There were like 14 days that would go by where we were waiting for somebody to do something, and I'm just pushing the bear as often as I possibly can. So my process was...
Well, I think mine was like maybe 30 days, start to end. Okay. So it was a little.
Yeah, if I would have called them and said I'm 30 days out, I think that there would have been a heart attack.
You would have been sitting waiting to.
You're gonna have a gap in service, sir. Yeah,
it's
that's what would have happened, and that would have been horrible. I'm not going back to the
It's good. It's good. Like Compo 2, Compo 3, good options, and it is a way to. Kind of look at, like for me, it was a way to tide myself over sanity wise and a tiny little bit financially wise while I was coming out.
Do you use TRICARE?
It is really hard to beat TRICARE.
Right.
So I still use TRICARE, even though BlackRock Strategy has a really good healthcare plan. It's just slightly edged out by the convenience of TRICARE.
$275 a month. Families covered?
Yeah, I think it's that much. It's not a lot for family coverage. No. There are some structural advantages that TRICARE has because it's a government administered healthcare plan that or it's not government administered, but it's a government healthcare plan that other healthcare plans don't have, even if they're really good. So you've got a really low family deductible catastrophic cap, which unfortunately we've had to use a couple times. Thanks to some scary incidents with a couple of my daughters. But the other piece of it is the usability. Experiences may vary. Some people have terrible experiences with it. I've only had positive experience with dealing with the customer service aspect of TRICARE, sorting through billing and stuff for various hospital things. And I mean, my one daughter had a health issue that she had that would have costed a house had it been anywhere else, but TRICARE was able to take care of it. Yeah, so just people that are looking at if you're in and you're trying to figure out am I going to use my company plan or am I going to use TRICARE, or people that are looking at do I need to continue to do the Guard or the reserves to continue for some of the benefits, the pay, the pension, the health insurance.
It's a long-term vision. Sometimes you get out and you're 25 and you think, well, if I can't collect on this until I'm 65 minus whatever algorithm they use to get me to whatever age is going to be, I'll be able to collect. Yeah. Well, it's most likely you're going to be that age. And when you are that age, are you going to wish that 28-year-old self planned for it? And that's one of the conversations that we get to have. Let's take a quick break. Yeah. And then when we come back, we can knock out the rest.
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
How do two average size, I guess?
Yeah.
Not fit in a room.
Yeah. It's a small room.
And we're back.
And we're back.
All right, we've got a list.
Yeah.
How are we doing on the list?
We're doing great. we're jumping around a little bit. It's organic, it's natural, it's provisional, it's what we need to be, right? That's it. So what are the other things I wanted to talk about? So it's an experience that I had going through, the interview process, job search process, and now we try to work out of our process at BlackRock Strategy is the commoditization of veteran talent, right? And the things you have to watch out for as you're going through the job search process. Frankly, it's one of the things that I've always appreciated that InVets offers to people, to veterans coming into the state, is a buffer against commoditization. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of organizations and companies that look at veterans and they say, well, these guys and gals are used to working long hours. They don't complain a lot. If I let them sleep inside, they're happy, and I can do what I want, right? They're not going to unionize, that kind of stuff. It's probably an extreme example, but like
we're getting high, but there's a level of truth.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so my boss likes to say like we're not going to be the people to capitalize on everyone's Stockholm syndrome that's coming out. But there are plenty of people for whom that's a competitive advantage in the market space because they're looking at the employer relationship as an adversarial one for whatever reasons. You see this a lot in manufacturing because that the structural incentives in the manufacturing sector oftentimes create an adversarial relationship between employees and management. And where veterans come in is, you've got these people that are willing to work really hard, that are kind of new to the environment of civilian work. There's various levels of, I don't want to say desperation, but like a little bit of like, that mild panic of, oh my God. And so of entities that'll swoop in and be like, oh, come here. Why don't you take this job, as a IT person for me? And then, before you know it, you're just telemarketing or something like that, right? That's
right.
Yeah,
I have examples.
Yeah, it's not great. And InVets helps build partnerships with companies that are going to value the experience of veterans as potential contributors and employees to their companies. And there's vetting mechanism that goes into that veterans coming out don't always have the ability to look at. And even in some of the best cases where like you have companies, especially larger companies, that are prepared to bring in veterans or have like special offices or entities to evaluate and bring in veterans directly from service, a lot of times they're just looking at, okay, well, what was their job title? Like in the last podcast we did, I talked about my experience as like technically on paper an armor officer, and being kind of reduced to the GoArmy.com description of what that is, to some companies that I was interviewing at. They completely missed and glossed over all the other stuff that I was capable of doing. To a certain extent, if that's enough to get you in the door at a place you really want to be, and then you can like surprise everybody with all the other stuff that you bring to the table besides. That doesn't really happen for armor officers, but like maybe if I was a signal officer or something and I had like technical skills, that would be more apt. But you also gotta like make that trade-off in your mind and see what you're willing to do. Because again, like nobody can articulate who you are better than you until you're already in the door, which is a challenge because you're not in the door because you're looking for a job.
Just to pause on the partnership. And the experience that you're just talking about. That when I left active duty command, one of the things that surprised me as much, having come from a prior professional career, going into the military, then leaving the military and coming back into something like a professional career, meeting people and their conception of what a military member was. They're like, well, why do you want to bring a service member? Well, they do what they're told and they are willing to do the things that you just said. And I was like, but you also value their critical thinking and their problem-solving ability, which is not needed if you just want them to do what they're told. And then that's when my passion for like, as InVets as a whole, the passion of, hey, we're going to find businesses that understand that there's a large body of capabilities within that one human, and making those partnerships with those businesses, and then being the advocate, because you can't have a service member like that is such a 1950s, 60s like mindset. Like, and those people weren't that either. Like, that's the fascinating part. So yeah, I get like I have a bully pulpit I like to get on for making sure that all service members leaving are put into a place where their skills are used, and we're starting to see that fruit.
It's important, sometimes to ask in an interview, what do you see in me, right? Like what has piqued your interest to get me to this point? Obviously, I want the job. I've expressed interest in the job. You think that I might be the fit for the job. What's indicating that to you? And then you can kind of gauge, how do they think about employees? How do they think about recruitment? How do they think about people as the service provider, whatever it is, whether you're making a widget or delivering, knowledge and expertise, it's always people that are delivering that. Even if you're leveraging AI, right? It's people teaching the AI what to do, prompting it to create outputs. So it's, we haven't gotten away from a human-centric workforce yet.
You just made that's a crazy concept, is the interviewee asking a question. Yeah. And there's a ton of value.
Well, they always ask, right? We always ask. I was asked in every interview, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions for us? And that was always one that I asked. Well, not always, but after a few, I started asking, because I was like, well, I need to get some feedback. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And like, how are they thinking about that? That's when I was at AWG as part of our, training for, elicitation, interviewing, whatever you want to call it. We had this box that we would use called the 4 ways of seeing, that I've never stopped using since then. And it's always, it's the examination of, how do I see myself? How does the other person or other organization see me or us? How do we see them, or how do I see them? And then how do they see themselves, right? You got to put all those boxes together and understanding that before you can create an effective connection, or like bridge a connection, build rapport. Like asking questions to try and put that box together, doing research to try and put that box together before you go into the interview process will give you a leg up on it'll give you a leg up on how you interact with the people that are interviewing you.
And most of the folks that we're working with are seeking professional careers. Yeah. And that would be is great advice for somebody seeking a professional career, because I think that the person that is interviewing you is hoping that you're doing something like that. And I don't know if they all do that, because interview prep is one of the hardest aspects. I've probably only done interview prep with 5 there's 850 people in my there's 850 veterans in my caseload. Yeah. And some have, gotten hired and moved on, and I've moved them on. But really sitting down and going over and giving some confidence. Yeah. Because the person being interviewed is in such a strategic disadvantage. Yeah. And how can you raise that position? Yeah.
Well, so you don't. I will break in and say, I don't think that you should think about it in terms of like advantage, disadvantage, because it shouldn't be adversarial. And if it feels adversarial, you probably don't want to be there. Right? Yep. Good point. But what you do want to do is make sure that your interview prep can't just be like exposure therapy, so that you're not like terrified or sweating too much when you're like sitting in front of people or whatever. And it can't be this like exhaustive, time-consuming process of trying to guess every single question they might ask you and come up with a prepared response for it, right? Yeah. You have to develop tools like the 4 ways of seeing, right? To be able to rapidly like make assessments and adapt in the interview to stuff that might come out, and give sustainable, provisional self-responses, authentic in that way, to your interviewers, that give them a picture of who you are as a professional, who you will be as a professional in their organization, and then for you to evaluate, am I going to be a fit in this culture? Not just am I happy, but is this a place that I can thrive? Is this a place that I can, work out the balance? My dad gave me this advice one time. We climbed Mount Whitney when I was in high school, and we're sitting around the campfire and talking about going to college and women, which is super weird because, and he's like, and he's like, when you pick a partner, pick someone that you can be a partner with, because like love is an emotion, and you have to find someone that you can build a life with. People don't always get that right with a spouse, and you're not always going to get it right with a career. It's a selection process, right? And selection's always ongoing, right? Selection never ends.
Never stops.
Yeah, it never stops. But for a career standpoint, you go in with the same mindset, right? Is this a company that I can build a partnership with, where I'm contributing to them and I'm also like growing and thriving in the context that they provide me in a professional context?
I think it's more of a add-on in a way, but some service members have not had the opportunity to spend the time it takes to put their story together. And I think that's where it can be a disadvantage if the first time you're trying to put your story together is in front of somebody that just asked you to tell your story.
Yeah.
And you've got to work that out. You have to work that out before you're in front of your interview. And you're right, hopefully it's not adversarial, but thinking about your story and putting it together in a cogent way I don't think it comes intuitive to a lot of people. And I think one thing I try to work with a service member to say, let's put that story together so that when you do leave, you don't wish you would have said X. Because you're like, man, that was the key point and I can't believe I didn't say it. Let's make sure that your story is in line. Because you're right, don't sweat over questions. I mean, there's some basic questions I think most interviews ask.
Yeah, you should be prepared to answer those.
Right. But like if they want to know what your greatest success was, I hope you don't have to plan for that. Because it's your greatest success.
You should also though have a kind of a pool of those that you
right.
can pull from depending on like the situation. Like think about who you are, aspects of who you are, and then like how the successes can help illustrate those points, and then like make a selection off the back foot.
But that's where my mind is when I think of that preparation, and it's really just what story do you want to tell, and who are you? Yeah. I mean, like, not to like be corny, but like Jean Valjean and Les Mis, right? It's like, who am I? That's a question we have to ask. And especially when you're leaving an environment that is so unique compared to this thing called the private sector that operates so differently than the environment that you're leaving or that you've spent your lifetime in. Or you've cut your teeth. Like even you didn't retire.
Nope.
You're still in. No. But it was ROTC into lieutenant, into working that grind, and then coming out with, as you've stated, you love autonomy. Well, that isn't necessarily what the military would say we're giving people. But you developed that while you were in, and then you needed to make sure that where you went.
And frankly, I pursued it.
Right.
I found myself always trying to go places and follow leaders around that, like I've told you, my professional love language is autonomy bordering on supervisory negligence.
Which is a fantastic love language.
It is, but it's one that I've always like recognized I have to work into, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen quickly. It doesn't have to happen overnight. And I followed leaders on purpose through the military who granted me that, and I chased being able to be in organizations that would offer me that. Like, right, that was my key criteria from like a personal, professional standpoint. Like, I want that. I want to be in an organization that lets me pursue what is important within the commander's intent. I want to be in an organization that means that when I ask somebody a question about why something is the way it is, they're not allowed to tell me no matter what their rank is to a certain degree. That's what I was always pursuing. And I got there, and then I found myself looking at having to go back to places where that wasn't the case. Right. And that's really what tipped the scale.
Did you like realize that was a key part of who you were?
Man, I don't know. Probably I had a commander, it was when I was a rifle company commander, and I had, and maybe this goes into kind of the ability to like tailor your professional self, because I kind of didn't do a good job in this case. But it's, we were going through this time period where the focus was really on like core level readiness, which meant that we weren't doing a lot of like combat training that I wanted to as a company commander. And it was a lot of admin stuff, a lot of practice loading stuff on trains and boats, all that kind of thing. And it didn't last forever, but it lasted longer than I would have liked it to. And I wanted to go do some training, like tactical training. So, the boss put out a thing, he said, hey, the most important thing is training your soldiers. Don't let anything get in the way of that. And I was like, so nothing is more important than that. And he goes, nothing's more important than that. And I was like, so anything else falls by the wayside. He's like, yes. Why are you doing this? This is weird, Kevin. Probably in his head. And so I planned this training, and I was like, okay, well, we got this stupid meeting, an event that I have to go to, but nothing's more important than training, right? You told me that. right? So I'm going to make you tell me that that's not true because I'm going to go out to my training, right? And then that's not how that works in the military. So I got a phone call to like come back to the office, and I sit down, and he's like, close the door. And so he closed the door, and he goes, Kevin, you can be really petulant and spiteful sometimes. And I was like, ooh, that's not something you want your want your boss telling you. And it was a good conversation. Luckily I had the credibility to recover from being a little petulant and spiteful sometimes, and learn from it. But that was kind of the thing that like defined what I was chasing, what I'd always been chasing, but what I was chasing especially then, which was the ability to like understand the job that I was going to be asked to do, and the combat role that I was being asked to fill, and then prepare to do that on my own. You let me do it. I'm good at it. I'm going to get it done. But don't tell me that this other stuff is more important, or I'm going to make you say what you say is important isn't important, and that's not always an appropriate approach to take. But that's kind of
so. Like, what age was that?
27, young 27.
Right, just hard charging. What's home?
Yeah, exactly. Don't engineer situations where your boss has to go back. Read between the lines. When
back to your spouse, right? Back to spouse life.
He was a great, phenomenal boss too. So I shouldn't have done that. I wasn't perspective taking, right? I wasn't thinking about all the facets of what was going on.
The beauty of being 27 and.
Yeah, I'm 27. I'm good at my job, so therefore I can do whatever I want. Right. It's like that spiteful, that chip on your shoulder you get as a junior officer. That's kind of what spurred it in me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So looking at the interview like prep process, one of the things that I also want to talk about is leveraging artificial intelligence. What passes for artificial intelligence? As a tool to aid you in your job search, and especially application. I'm going to limit to application because there's a ton of stuff that you can do to prep, to explore, to research, and a lot of people have said stuff on that. But for applications, what I will say, and I got to it a little bit in our last conversation, our last recorded conversation. Don't just use AI to write your cover letter, write your resume, tailor it. You have to go over and look at it. The sequence has to be prompt, inspect, refine, reprompt, refine, reprompt, refine until it's to the point that you want it. And that refinement is like you're writing it. You're going in there and writing.
You have to have skin in that game.
You have to, right? Because otherwise you're not going to you're not learning about yourself. I learned a lot about myself from putting together a resume, and it forced me to really like become familiar with the path that I had taken and be able to talk about it. I probably could have done with like a couple hundred less resumes that I had to write, and tailor. But it was a learning experience. But that's not the only reason you should do that, right? It's a quality thing as well, because AI only works as well as the training data that you fill it. And if you do nothing else, and you just put your stuff into the whatever, ChatGPT, Claude, and Drop, or whatever you're going to use, what's going to come out is based on you don't even know what, right? Because you don't know what their training data set looks like. So the novice level approach is, well, here's the job description on the career page. Here's my resume. Tailor my resume and write me a cover letter if cover letters are necessary. That's based off this like job description. And you need the job description in the training set so that you can like hit the right keywords, especially for companies that are bigger that are using like tracking systems. Right. But you have to get deeper than that, right? So don't, like, if you look at the role, have it pull out keywords from the role or key concepts from the role, and then like go find like expert overviews on that. Get on Google Scholar and like load up a paper from there that's like, hey, this is something that I'm familiar with. Here's someone that's already written about it. Let's put it in there. Make sure that we're contextualizing the resume tailoring, the role tailoring with this in-depth technical knowledge about, the role that I want, or like the characteristics that I've identified and how I might have these characteristics. Build out a big training set that helps articulate who you are, aspects of your personality. You don't have to write it all, but you have to do the research to find the things that are going to allow the system to communicate on your behalf. Because when you strip it away, like it's not synthesizing anything new. I mean, kind of, but it's not creative, right? Yet, maybe someday. But you have to give it the ability to communicate on your behalf, because it's really what you're asking it to do, is incorporate these concepts, articulate these concepts about me in a written format so that I can hand it off to another process that will determine whether or not I'm a potential fit. So build a big training data set and then look at the outputs and like do a manual scrub of everything. You know, it can be quicker if you use AI to help you. It accelerates your project. Right. It will accelerate the pace at which you are able to do good work. It will not gift you with the ability to do good work.
Yeah. Yep. The only thing I'd add is, I mean, other than you have to write your cover letter, the human has to take full responsibility. And not, if it is as important as we say it is, then we have to own it fully and then go to the source that maybe can make it a little bit better. But some of that is more than just words, right? It's like more than just, can you make my vocabulary better? And I think that's sometimes really like at the bottom of what people are looking for, is they're like, well, I write like a 10th grader. And I want to sound like I'm a master's educated. But the work that you've done, that body, you really have to own. And I see a lot of, I really hesitate to call it lazy, but I can't really think of a better word. I just see a lot of like laziness on that front, where it's like we found this new technology and we're like, oh gosh, this is awesome. I don't have to do anything. And it's like, man, I don't know if you're going to get the job that you're looking for. And if you did, it's weird. It's like unearned wisdom, unearned job. Like it's all very strange. This new world.
Well, if you're capable of doing it, then you can earn it back after the fact, I guess, if you want to say it like that. But a lot of times people aren't. But I don't think there's that many people out there. My experience is anecdotal. I don't think there's that many people out there that are bamboozling their way into really good jobs using AI. I know they couldn't do it in ours because we have so many like filters to get people out that are doing that. Not because they're bad people, but just because they wouldn't be a fit. The rule for us, we have tools that we use that are AI for some work that we do. But the rule that we have is you don't get to use those tools. You don't get the keys to the car until after you've learned how to drive. So until you're already an expert at the process, we're not going to give you a tool to be more productive. This is the thing I tell.
I mean, we're still using mapping compass, and then you get handed the Garmin, and then you're told that the Garmin's probably not going to work in certain environments.
Well, exactly. And it's not even about the degraded environment for AI for us, or you might not have a computer, because I mean, who doesn't have a computer, whether it's your phone or whatever in this day and age? What it is you have to be an expert so that we know we can trust the outputs from that AI, that large language model more, because it's coming from you ultimately. It's coming from the training data that we all put together. Some of it is aggregation from all of humanity, but it's also like the stupid parts of humanity that are getting incorporated, because it's just taking what's available.
So true.
So we say that, and what I always I'll talk to military staffs about this, and like when we get some technologies, the answer to this stuff is AI. It's like, oh well, we'll make sure that like we're lowering the mental bandwidth required, the operator burden, and like. Sometimes what they're saying in that is like, we'll make it so your stupidest soldier can use this because it'll be AI, right? But especially for like staff work or like products that are coming out, like knowledge products, it's like, I don't want you to make my stupidest person unbelievably productive. Like that's worse than before.
The direction of travel matters.
Yeah, so that's right. So, but if we apply that, if you do a little introspection and apply that to how you're using it for like the job search or the application process, it's like it's going to help you to do what you're good at faster, but it's also going to help you do what you're bad at faster too. So if you don't work to train that out of the system, at least put an effort in. that's going to hamstring you as much as it helps you do things faster. That's my caution on AI. And I think that the last thing that I wanted to talk about is like the do I get out and learn or do I get out and work decision with like schooling and stuff. It's
hot topic. It's good.
Well, yeah, and it's one that I went through a couple times because I was at decision points about whether to get out or stay in a few times in my career. And the plan when I went in was I'm going to go in, I'm going to do, a certain number of things. I want to be, I want to deploy, I want to be combat arms, I want to be a company commander, and then I'm going to get out, and then I'm going to go to grad school. Like once I decide I was going to get out and not do 20, right? I'll go to grad school, and then I'll go work somewhere else, and I'll do like a residential program for grad school. That didn't work out for me because I found myself on like the backside of 31 coming out of company command and going into troop command at AWG. And like even if I got out when I was done with this, like I can't take 2 years off to go get an MBA and like just hang out on a college campus somewhere. It's not going to work. So I got to start doing this now. So
that's so true.
Yeah. So exactly. So don't. Yeah. And there's a lot of literature out there that like focuses on extracting the maximum dollar value directly from like the GI Bill. And I went to school in service. I did not use TA because for officers that includes or that incurs an additional service obligation that I did not want. That was like the other thing that I was chasing through my career was not just autonomy in like operational sense, but autonomy in I don't want to be told how long I have to stay if I don't like it.
Right.
I don't want to be tied to something I don't like. I went after 7 years. I think I went in my 8th year, started in my 8th or 9th year. But like I was through the point where I had an ROTC scholarship, so there's a time limit on the back end where you don't start accruing GI Bill benefits, and then so I accrued GI Bill benefits, and I'm like, okay, well I gotta go while I'm still here. So I went to school part-time in the service, which meant that like I didn't get BAH diff for going to school online full-time. But when I calculate out, the calculation I had to make was I'm losing like $900 a month or something like that.
It's about right for online.
Yeah. But how much more per month am I going to gain because I'm coming out with an MBA or I'm from a good school or I'm coming out with, actually I ended up doing the dual degree program I used, so I came out with 2 master's degrees, but like what is the actual opportunity cost here? Not just money in my pocket now, but like over my working life, money in my pocket later, and how is this going to impact my ability to like seal the deal on a job search when I eventually get out? If I already have this here, is that better than if I wait until afterwards so that I can live in Bloomington instead of going to school online or something like that? That's right. So those have to factor into your decision-making process. If this is Kevin's 2 cents, right? If the cash value of like the BAH on the GI Bill is the differentiator for you about whether or not you should do like the program, you probably shouldn't do that program anyway because it's supposed to set
San
you
Francisco State University sounds amazing.
Yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, you go to San Francisco.
The cash value is $4,500 a month.
Yeah, but how much of that are you spending on your rent because you got to be at San Francisco State University? Yeah.
No, but that's a very good point. The cost analysis.
Yep.
Is important.
Cost in
the present
time.
value.
Yeah. Well, it's not just a financial calculation. It's cost in money, but cost in time, cost in stress on my family. Like, well, I'm just like hanging out at school, like doing school, which is hard work, but like was I gonna be at IU with 3 kids and then 4 kids by the time I finished, and I got to go to school. Down on America's greatest college campus, while my wife is, again, now working and also taking a back seat to my educational experience. No, I'm not. That's not going to work for my family. Yeah. It might work for some people, but
I'm sorry, I can't get over that part. But
it's America's. It is. It's the prettiest. Nice. It's just an objective. It's just an objective.
It's an objective truth.
It is. There is some bias tied in with that, but like there are times in which our own personal biases
happen to
also
intersect
align with the truth. Like I have the most adorable children in the world. Yours are cute, but like second place.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, before we devolve into chaos and me arguing about Notre Dame, while you were in, did you have a strategy for how you would attack as a father, 3 kids, in a unique environment?
Yeah.
Doing a dual graduate program.
Yeah, that's so as you're preparing to get out, whether it's school, studying for a PMP, doing whatever you're going to do to prepare to get out, tailoring applications, you can choose to sacrifice family time outside of work. And this is if you're doing this in preparation, right? Like when I was out, my full-time job was applying for jobs. So that's what I was doing during the day. It was driving me insane, but like that's what I had to do. When I was in to prepare to get out, I had a choice. I could sacrifice time with the family, and my wife could join the ranks of countless graduate school widows throughout history, or I could give up a little bit of sleep. I was already extremely familiar with, given the profession and also the fact that we have 4 kids, and so I made the choice that it was more valuable for me to do my career, give what I needed to give to the Army, give what I needed to give what I as much as I could give to the family, because it wasn't all I needed to give. It was, that my wife met me more than halfway on that. And then, taking time, going up in the attic, the attic office in Annapolis, or, the basement when we were living in my in-laws' place before our house got built at night, and like doing my work. And then,
how many hours would you say?
I mean, during finals week, a lot. To make sure assignments got done. Certain things took longer than others. It was never overwhelming at all.
Would you say on average 2 hours a night? Would you say?
Yeah, probably a couple hours a night, right? Like just if you're splitting it out. And there was a few times throughout grad school when I was up till like 3 a.m, and then you get up and you do it, or you take a little nap throughout the day. But it's the investment that you're making. Right. For the ability to not have to do that on the back end, and to not have to do it full time. And Brooklyn was incredibly supportive throughout the entire process, as she has been for everything. And our kids are great, so there's never like a ton of like distraction. And that's also, I did it at night so that, they weren't sacrificing as much either.
That time. You're the second guy to come on who chose that path. MBA, complete the MBA while in. That way, upon graduating, you can link what you did in service for experience to the education, and then entering the private sector as a well-rounded human, capitalize on military experience plus education.
Yeah.
Now 2 out of 7 have made that choice.
It's not for everybody, because it was hard. After I got done with it, I didn't know what to do with all my time. Now I'm still breaking myself of the late night habit to get back into the normal non-military non-grad school sleep cycle.
I'm a 4 a.m., 5 a.m. guy.
I'm trying to get to that.
Other side of you folks who are like, let me burn the candle in the evening time. Yeah. I give you guys a ton of credit. I'm a easy 10 to 4 guy.
Yeah.
I am not a 12 to 6, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's the same hours.
Yep.
But, man,
the rhythm.
6 hours is good. Under that, I'm definitely, my performance will suffer throughout the day.
Yeah.
But it's wild. Like, if you push me to 12, you might as well just, brain is fried. I don't know why.
Well, and the other thing that I tell people is life never gets less complex as you move further along with family, personal stuff, professional stuff. So I looked at it as, if I get this done now, I know what my workload is right now, and I know that I can squeeze this in. I don't know what it's going to look like 5 years from now.
That's right.
So I don't want to gamble on that. I've never been a gambler.
Apparently it's degenerating our generation with with all sorts of stuff I just read about yesterday. Which
Oh,
is
yeah,
terrifying.
sports betting
I
and
didn't,
stuff.
I had no idea. I don't know. I didn't know that it was destroying people's lives at a accelerated rate. No idea.
You can do it from your phone now. I've never been into
blessed.
that. I wasn't about to do it with my future time
Right.
either, and so it's it's another thing it's another thing. I couldn't have done it as a lieutenant. I couldn't have done it as a company commander, but I had more autonomy when I started it in asymmetric warfare group.
Right.
I had more autonomy to do that. The lessons I was learning were like, in a lot of cases, directly applicable to things that I needed to consider and help organizations work through in that team. So it was easier. Not everyone's going to have that. Earlier the better, right? That's what I would say.
I like the point about life's only going to get more complex.
Yeah.
Until it doesn't, which
Yeah.
is a really long time from
Yep.
now.
Man, that is like
That
like,
arc.
So we've hit throughout. Like I wanted to hit on like the mental preparation for transition you have to do, but like we've hit on that throughout the entire discussion. But what you just said there, like it's not gonna get simpler. If you find yourself doing, like so many of us in the military put in the time, put in the tremendous amount of effort it takes to be good and like be who you need to be for soldiers, you do that because you love it and it's rewarding for you, right? If you find a career that is like that for you, which is I think everybody's, you're gonna get sucked back in at some level to that, right? Like now, I'm one of the partners at BlackRock Strategy. My wife jokes all the time, like, we thought this was going to be a step down in terms of busyness, right? And it's not at all.
No.
But it's because I'm doing most of, aside from like jumping out of planes and like the cool guy like Rambo stuff, like I'm doing all the stuff that I loved in the military. I have the autonomy that I was craving, that I was always craving and always crave. And so I'm like passionate about it and I want to keep doing it. And not everyone's going to have that. And not everyone needs to have that to be happy in their lives. Like it's just something that I have. So if you can't put the rose-colored glasses on, and you can't always put it on for your spouse and say like, I'm like, all we got to do is get out and then like things will get easy.
Right.
Because it's not, it's just different. It's not simpler, it's just different. Like your kids are older, right? Like, so you're like, yeah, you're on both ends, right? But you look at like, people tell me all the time, because I'll be, they'll ask about the kids and all mine are under 7, right? So it's a lot. But it being a lot, I don't think ever goes away. It's just a lot looks different at, 16, 17, 18, beyond than it does at 7.
Well, I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody. The fact is, the minute that you embrace the difficulty is the minute, and I mean embrace it, not like say, oh, I know it's hard. No, embrace that is going to be, and then you can chart a path that's so much easier. But if you're constantly trying to catch up to how hard it is, or I feel tired, be tired. No. No, it's going to be this way, and it's going to stay this way. And in the end, you don't know when. So now let's recalibrate. Let's drink another cup of coffee. Let's smile. Let's go talk to somebody. Let's go have a good time, because this is our time. This is our season. And once the kids are old, older, they're out of the house. You're moving on into that, whatever that's going to look like. It will only perceive easy because you're still going to be fighting some fight. My buddy, I love him to death. He's a close mentor of mine. He said and I think he got it from somewhere else, but I wanted to give him Lance Cooper credit. He said, everybody has an adventure to live, a battle to fight, and somebody to save. And it's like, that's life. And if that ever stops, what are we doing?
I think that the last piece of the mental preparation thing is like, spend some time with your spouse if you're married. If you're not, like, there's that, it just gets different. But like, your wife wasn't as complex. I know my life wasn't as complex before I got married because I didn't have to consider anybody else. But the benefit you get from that complexity is teammate, right? And someone to like help you navigate these challenges and help support you. But don't like forget about the fact that like it's change for everybody, right? So like it's not just because you were wearing the uniform and now like you got to figure out a way to adjust and now everyone needs to support you. It's like if you got a family and you had a family in the military that's coming out with you, that's a huge adjustment for them too. And like you owe them the ability to like help support, at the very least, provide some sort of like stability to build around from there. Even if you don't have all the answers, like you can have the right approach, you know, or the right control over the feelings, and the ability to not wallow in the admittedly like very hard identity changes that you'll have to make. And you gotta check in like on a routine basis and say, you know, like how are we doing with your spouse, but then also like how do we know? How do we know that we're doing okay? Yeah. So are we actually doing okay, or are we just saying that we're doing it? Because you're not doing it alone. And if you try and do it alone, you'll find yourself doing it alone. You know, like that's
right. And that's where many of us fall.
It's hard. I haven't always done the best job. I don't always do the best job of it. Brooklyn usually does the best job of it, but I don't. And it's hard. But you have to find ways that work within your relationship to do that, to prep to get out, and then continue to execute that as you get out and into whatever challenges you find yourself in beyond in the civilian world.
Regular check-ins with your spouse.
Yeah, and just like be nice to each other. Don't take. I hit it because it hits you in some. You think, no, like this is something I want to do, so I'm not going to be one of those people that like gets hit hard by the identity changes and stuff. But you do. That's a foolish outlook to take on it. You know, like my transition from military to civilian work wasn't instantaneous, right? There's a lot of failures and a lot of like feelings of having the rug pulled out, you know, and rejection that I had to deal with at the same time as like I didn't have an anchor point outside of like the guard and in my family. You know, there's some times when I didn't handle that like constructively, right? Probably with, you know, the way that probably some entitlement with the family of like, you know, you guys got to support me through this and all that kind of thing. Like, this is really hard for me. Well, it's hard for everybody. So like, let it be hard for everybody together, not just like focus on your own stuff. So yeah, you got to get ready for that. And that's not something that anyone can do for you other than to tell you to figure out what you need to do to get ready for it. And then work with your family, the people closest to you that are.
Hey everybody, just want to take a minute, thank Kevin Pavnica for round 2. He reached out after the prior podcast and said, we spent a lot of time talking about me, Jesse. I still have some things I want to share for the veteran community that's out there that's looking to punch out, separate from active duty, guard, reserve, retiring, or trying to figure out what they're doing. I still have some things I want to share with them. So I'm really glad he reached out. It was an awesome conversation. Also, this is our 11th podcast, so it means I want to thank the 10 guests that came before. It's pretty exciting for us to launch this new venture. And then if you like this podcast, if you know some folks that it could help, please go ahead and share it. This podcast is for everybody that is a service member 12 to 18 months out from transitioning and trying to figure out what their next mission is going to be. So that's all the guests that we have on are either to help them or have been one of them. So go ahead and send that to them. It's our goal, our mission is to make sure that we're of service. We as MVETs are of service to all those who have served. And every one of us that's forward facing has served in some capacity. And we understand the difficulty that is in front of all transitioning service members going from active duty, military to private sector. So if you like, please like it, subscribe, share far and wide. We look forward to continuing to serve our mission.